Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Daily Office. We're in the second week of Easter. Christ is risen from the dead, and we have some new books to look at in our daily readings. And what I'd like to jump in with today is Peter's first epistle. And it's just a great book, so rich. And I want you to notice how strong Peter is in chapter 1, describing God's action in saving us. It opens with that great little Trinitarian formula there, where you see God the Father doing something, you see God the Son doing something, you see God the Holy Spirit involved in it all. And what I'd like you to do in chapter 1 is to make a list of everything that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit has done for us and to us. I mean, really, his action is that strong that it's like it's being done unto us by the sovereign act of God. All right, so very strong. And then as you read, you're making a list of each thing with a little quote and the verse number there. And then beside it, another column, what do we add to the process? Make a list of those experiences and emotions and actions that we take, that we have in response. And just as a little hint, I see 6 of them there in verses 13 through 22. I wonder how many you find. And once you have your lists, take time to dwell on each and ask the question, how do I see God acting in these ways in my life? How many of those am I experiencing? All right. And then also with the responses that we have, how many, in what ways do you see your responses corresponding to those that Peter describes? And I imagine there might be some deficits between what Peter describes and we are experiencing. Are there deficits in your experience or response? And I'm curious, and this is where we need to dig in a little deeper, what actions that Peter describes stood out to you as needing maybe more focus or intention on your part to be more like that? You see what I'm asking there? And once you have circled maybe 1 or 2 of those on your list, make that something you talk about with Jesus. Conversational intimacy. You can just say it, you know, like eye to eye with the guy. You can say, Lord, I see you want me to conduct myself in reverent fear this week. And I'm kind of scratching my head to find ways in which I'm doing that. All right. So honest to God. And then ask a question or two, like, Lord, what do you think of that? Am I missing something? And then just in a few moments, take a minute to notice what you see or hear or feel in response to that question, because Jesus wants to interact with you. Can you picture Jesus communicating with you in that moment? What comes to your heart or mind? It could be him speaking to you, all right? Because Jesus is working to draw each of us as fully into the experience that Peter spoke of there in chapter 1. Jesus wants to bring us more deeply into the experience of what Peter is describing here, all right? That's chapter 1. Now you turn the page to chapter 2, and Peter continues with some exhortations. He's telling us things that we need to do as a result of everything that God has done for us. And he wants us, he comes right out in verse 1 of chapter 2 to say, rid yourselves of malice and other things, deceit, actions that treat others poorly, all right? And then he says, I love how he says this, allow yourself to be built into a spiritual building. Now, what Peter's describing here is the temple, right? Every Jew in the ancient world would think the temple in Jerusalem. It's a magnificent structure. We've seen pictures of it before. And Peter's taking that temple out of Jerusalem and he's bringing it into the life of these congregations that he's writing to. He says each one of us in these congregations are like living stones being built together. That's the kind of cohesion and integration that Peter wants to see in Christian communities. All right, so that's one point about that. There's another point if we step back and look at just the idea of Christian community being a temple. It's really quite a startling image because the temple in Jerusalem is soon to be destroyed. I mean, this could have been written at the early phase of the Jewish war when the Romans were conquering Galilee all the way down through Judea. They killed or exiled almost every Jew in the Holy Land, and they completely destroyed Jerusalem in the temple. And Peter's saying that Christian communities all around the Roman empires are the replacement for the temple in Jerusalem. We are the building in which God dwells. We are the new priesthood. We are offering the sacrifices. We are sacrifices offered pleasing to God. We are the new proclaiming people, showing Gentiles all around us what it's like to live in love with the Creator, living in his marvelous light. All right, so that's Peter's describing them, and it's even more startling when we reflect on the context in which Peter uses the image of the temple, because he's describing a people in exile. This is a major theme in Jewish literature, really since the Assyrians invaded, like in 736 BC. So for 700 years, Jews, a large portion of Jews have lived in exile, lived outside the Holy Land. And you see how he describes us, his people, his audience, back in chapter 1 of opening verses. See how he addresses them as exiles of the dispersion. He's talking to diaspora Jews there in Asia Minor, but it's not just in the land we call Turkey, but it was all over the ancient world. Jewish communities scattered typically by pagan invasions of the Holy Land. They left, they settled all around the ancient world. And these Jews would periodically return to Jerusalem as pilgrims for the Passover, for the Pentecost, up there on the Temple Mount. Peter is now transferring the temple from Jerusalem to their local community. He's saying, you are the temple. And in verses 11 through 17 of chapter 2, he's teaching them how to live as exiles, kind of like Jeremiah did in his letter to the exiles back in his book in the 6th century BC. And in chapters 3 and 4, he teaches them how to live faithfully as God's people in these massive pagan cities. And in chapter 4 in particular, he gets down on how to suffer for your witness to Jesus. And of course, we in America have a rare blessing in human history of living in Christian communities that have been free of persecution, really for centuries now, but who knows what the future holds. So it's good to be back to these daily office videos, and I'll see you soon. God bless you.